Good morning, traders, and a happy Friday out there to everyone. Hope that everyone had a nice evening there and are all ready for this day in front of us here. Just to be aware of, we do have our 8:30 data point this morning, our non-farm employment change for the U.S. as well as the unemployment rate. And you also have the similar figures coming out for Canada as well. They have their employment change and their unemployment rate to be aware of, both of which will be coming out at 8:30 Eastern Time there. And then after the opening, we'll have our final services PMI and ISM service PMI respectively there. But with that said, the early morning items there will be that 8:30 figures, employment figures for both the U.S. and Canada there. So we'll keep those in mind. But with that said, we'll come over here and start to blow up our daily charts here so we can see what we had going on in the overnight session. Kept it nice and contained, right? We had 43.35 as the Globex high, 43.25 as the Globex low. So basically a perfect 10-point Globex range there to work with. In other words, very tiny. But that's perfectly fine because we did have fairly good trendiness during yesterday's session. So not too uncommon on the days following more of our trend day. We typically will see, at least in the early morning session, a little consolidation or two-way trading, in which case we can perhaps trade on both sides of that opening price, do a little digesting from the progress that we had made yesterday. So that's something to bear in mind. We'll want to see how that market breadth opens in the morning session there after our pit session opening, but we'll see if we are able to get any type of that feeling where we get the trades on both sides of the opening price. If and when we do move outside the first hour's range, we can keep an eye, see if that's met with any type of fading activity, and then kind of proceed from there. So that's just something to bear in mind off the bat, since we did have good trendiness yesterday. Outside of that, we have the previous day's high there, which comes in at 43.39.75. So that remains untested in the overnight session. And then we have all those previous congestion here on the daily charts that we would be bumping our heads back up against. So no doubt we've carried the ball quite a ways here. We've had 4 days of low to high trading. So just kind of keeping an eye, since we didn't have a very large Globex session there, they could still come in and try and test towards the previous day's high. But what I'd be keeping a watch on is seeing if we, after that opening, if we do get any feeling of that two-way trading. Outside of that, 43.40 is just kind of this lower data point that we had here from the trading on the 13th of October. So just a couple ticks shy, getting on the other side of that during yesterday's trading, and in the overnight session we're keeping it just beneath that previous day's high there. So just hovering slightly beneath this previous congestion area. And then when we come over here to our 120-minute display, or our intraday charts, we could see same idea. Here's that previous range that we have boxed off there on the dailies. But when we came up here, we could see the oscillator configuration. Essentially new momentum highs there on that 120-minute display. And we can see on our hourly charts and such the fact that we just been building out a bit of a sideways line, consolidating some of this good progress that we had made to the upside. So this will be another item that's going to look nice there on the market profile display, just because we did have the rapid markup during yesterday's more trendy move there to the upside. So didn't spend a whole lot of time going in and developing those areas there. So we'll see about it there. Obviously, they're not falling down at all by any means here in this early morning session, but we'll be keeping an eye. 43.20. If you started to work back beneath that, perhaps escape that little overnight range and start to do some work on some of that progress that we had made yesterday. But we'll take it one step at a time. For now, they're maintaining. They're kind of stuck right between these two broader points there on the 120-minute display there. So that's what we have going on with our S&P. Over here with the DAX, a little bit of a larger range in the overnight session. They were able to trade above their previous day's high, not by very much, but then they're backing off, so a little different of a rhythm than that in the ES. So DAX taking a bit of a pause or consolidation bar. The only other thing here with the DAX is that we're essentially already seeing here, if we grab this hourly chart, this is something that's been panning out or resolving during the overnight session, and it's just this feeling of a little sell divergence or loss of momentum here on the hourly time frames with that of the DAX. So we've already come down and reverted back to the hourly moving average. So what we might want to note here is this 15,190 there, just because we did put in some work there. So if we, in case we drop back below that zone in the DAX, would kind of be using that as a bit of a cautious area there. But like we said, they've already come down and have already had some reversion to the mean there on those hourly charts, compared to our ES, which on our hourly chart we don't have that same rhythm of a little loss of momentum or sell divergence. So DAX already having corrected that off, and then for now we could kind of just hop back out to this 120-minute display because it shows quite nicely this previous little range that we had, our little shortening in the length of the swings up here, and just coming in, doing some reversion to the mean on those hourlies, and for that matter, you could call it the 120-minute moving average as well. Wouldn't be too far out. That also would come in fairly close to 15,190 there. So as far as the DAX goes, 4 days of low to high, doing a little bit of a consolidation day so far in this early morning session. So we'll certainly keep that on the radar there today. And then we have this euro currency, which we know has been really putting in quite the fight there. We had a wide 3-bar balance mode during yesterday's trading. And kind of goes without saying here in the overnight session, we're working on testing into the tail area there with this euro currency. We by no means have taken that out as of yet. That comes in at 1.06865 there from the previous day's high, which came in the form of a spike tail. And why this might be important for us is because we've been having these instances where we have these nice erratic moves to the upside, but when we come in and do that, we've been doing it with slightly lower highs along the way. So as we come up here again in this euro currency, we'll want to watch this particular, previous day's high, see how they handle that tail, because if they take it out, that would be the first higher high that they've put in there for a little while. So EC should be worth keeping an eye on there today. 1.06865 is the previous day's high. The cautionary in case we do not continue to move to the upside. In case we fail at all, I would be using 1.06335 as being more of a caution area if we did not proceed to work any closer towards that previous day's high. But for now, they're holding their ground. They're doing okay. So keep a watch on them, see how they handle their morning data point as well. And then we got this gold here. Gold still kind of stuck between these two points here. We're still beneath the 5 SMA here on the daily bars, which we're at least testing here today, 1996.1. So we'll want to keep an eye on that because we did have our close below there on the 31st, and we did not really take out the bar that moved outside the 3-bar, that 1978.2, so that remains untested. And we'll see here, 5 SMA 1996, previous day's high is 1992, so it gives us some mild areas to work with, but as we can see here, we've carried the ball quite a ways on this 120-minute display, so now we're coming in after having large standard deviation move to the upside. Just kind of working off some back and forth. We had that little U-turn at the top, so just spending some time building out some continued range, but I think that 5 SMA should serve us fairly well there in the case of the gold. That would be something to monitor more so, seeing as to where we close with respect to that, but not too bad of a look there for that of the gold. And then we have the crude and these bonds before wrapping things up here before our morning data point. Crude not a bad showing. Yesterday they took out the previous day's low. It just didn't quite take out the previous day's high. Didn't quite give us that outside up bar feeling. So what we have in the crude, we're already above the previous day's high, but since we fell short on it yesterday, that 2-day high that we have up there at 83.42 would likely be an area of interest there for the crude. We've been putting in some work here, no 3-bar balance mode from yesterday's action. Like we said, the only other issue here is that on the intraday charts, we've been continuing to put in slightly lower lows on the 120-minute chart, so no real major trend reversal as of yet. However, nothing wrong with them still coming in and being able to test points of interest. So that would be that 83.42 up above. If we proceeded to push up any further, that's essentially what we would be running up to in that of the crude. And if we don't, then he would have a fairly wide 3 bar because you got the 2-day high 83.42, the 2-day low, which is just simply going to be that previous day's low. But as we can see, we're well up above that 80.22 from yesterday's low there, so playing nicely inside the previous 2 days range there as far as the crude goes. And then we have these bonds. These bonds really, really try to get themselves going there yesterday. We could blow these ones up here. Pretty stellar, range expansion bar that we had 2 days ago. And obviously a good degree of follow through yesterday, so we really saw those 30-year yields kind of depart from that 5% threshold there, that 5% handle on the daily bar. So I got to give them some credit because they certainly spent a lot of time there. So if I were to pull this yield display up, you can see once again we're departing from that 5% mark. So currently we'd be settling in and opening here at 4.789% basis, those 30s. 2 days of very strong low to high trading, and one of the few markets we don't really have this formation in too many of the groups, but is the nature in which we had the move to the upside. Good low to high action, right? So impulse up in that oscillator there. Next swing up a little shorter in the duration, so we had another swing up, but of a slightly lower magnitude. So we do have some shortening in the length of the swing, some mild, 120-minute sell divergence there. The only issue is that, just like, I forgot what market it was. Oh, it was the 15-minute ES yesterday. What we'll want to note is this new high in the slow line there. So despite having the lower high in the fast line, that new high in the slow line makes it a little bit of a bumpy ride as far as any type of major reversion to the mean goes. So there with the bonds, and we got to really kind of bump this up just a notch there, just so we can get our additional data point that looms up above, and just to kind of help us see as to where we're trading here currently. So we look over to the far left, we had this big, higher or lower high that took place, and then we had this nice, swift move to the downside. So as we come back, we're back into this big 3 days of price bar overlap that we had, and we'll just see as to how the 120-minute oscillator starts to shape up there for us. So far, hasn't given up really much ground there, so not too bad in the case of the bonds. And just for fun here, they are not really too dissimilar, is that of the 10-year notes. Here with the notes, the 10s, what we might want to take into account, these are some old levels here, is that the bonds, the 30s here, were able to do some better testing, or at least traded on the other side, gave it a perfect test of their previous day's high, whereas these 10s, as you can see, obviously haven't been able to follow suit as of yet. So not quite that same feeling on the 120-minute like we have in those 30 years. So, and we got that morning data point, so we'll let them run their course. Perhaps the 10s want to do some residual testing, follow suit a little better there with the S&Ps. But with that said, let me shrink this back down. And for fun, we'll put that up there so we can keep an eye on that going into the data point there. We'll leave up that 120-minute chart of the bonds, and that'll be coming out in a little over 2 minutes, and we will be on our merry way here for this lovely Friday here, our first Friday of November there to work with. So, and it has a little piece of data for Canada as well, so we'll see what type of gyrations we get some charts back up and adjusted, and see what we got lining up for us in this early morning session.